Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Geneva Internet platform to celebrate today with us the 4th Geneva Engage Award, our annual conference on social media outreach and engagement. A special welcome also to our online audience who is following us online through our social media and YouTube stream. Without further ado, I would like to invite to start off the conference our two introductory speakers, Dr. Stephanie Borg-Psaila, Interim Director of the Geneva Internet Platform, and Nicolas Negli, Deputy Secretary General at the Department of Economic Development of the Canton of Geneva. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, and colleagues who are joining us online, welcome to the 4th Geneva Engage Awards. The awards are an established annual event and a very important one for us. Some of our guests here in the auditorium have been attending year after year. But we're also very excited to see new winners this year, and also honored to have the representatives and heads of communication teams of these great organizations and permanent missions. Although the awards recognize a number of winners, this is actually a celebration of all the work that is being done in International Geneva by everyone here, and so many other colleagues who work tirelessly behind the scenes. And here I will share a note. At the Geneva Internet Platform, we know what it is to work behind the scenes. On the front, it's maybe a few people whom you see, but in reality, there are a lot of dedicated members in our team who make this event and so many other events possible. So I'd like to thank my colleagues behind the scenes and also your colleagues who work behind the scenes, because usually communication teams, especially for the bigger organizations, are quite large, but also for those organizations who do not have dedicated communication teams, there are also usually a lot of dedicated people behind the scenes. One factor which today's awards recognize is not just the number of followers or the number of likes. It is also the engagement on social media. This is because the size of one's team or the financial resources which we may have or which we may not have, they're not everything. So other elements are just as important. And these are the pride in what we do, the passion to communicate it, the genuine interest in communicating with people, and the diligence of maintaining regular contact with the public. And in fact, one of the aims of the Geneva Engage initiative is also to showcase the work which smaller organizations and permanent missions are doing. Colleagues, what happens in Geneva matters for the rest of the world. Only this week, and this is just an example of what happens in International Geneva, Geneva was the host of substantive discussions with the UN Secretary General on the future of journalism. There were also discussions on the future of work and on human rights in the ongoing Human Rights Council meeting, which is spread over a few weeks. All of these discussions are of direct interest for people worldwide. What we are doing, therefore, is not simply to communicate what we are doing, what we do on a daily basis, but highlights our important role in explaining the major issues through impartial and informed coverage. And so once again, I thank you all for joining us today as we celebrate the work of actors in International Geneva. Thank you. And on that note, I invite Mr. Negli for the comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Good afternoon to you all. We are here to recognize your outreach, your engagement through social media. So I have to start with a confession. I very much hesitated to essentially tweet my introductory speech, or perhaps to post a Facebook or LinkedIn post at 4:20 Geneva time. After all, we speak about social media. But then I thought perhaps not everything should get digitized, and I'm very proud to be here with you physically this afternoon. Geneva Engage is an initiative which the Canton of Geneva is very proud and indeed very happy to support, as it recognizes your amazing work, the amazing work of all of the Geneva-based international actors. Geneva is indeed the world's main hub of multilateral diplomacy. Nobody said this better than the UNOG Director General, Michael Muller. International Geneva affects the life of every single person on this planet every single day. So many of the decisions, negotiations, and discussions are indeed taking place in Geneva, and it's really imperative to convey what's happening here in Geneva to the rest of the world in an appropriate manner. In this day and age, just doing great work isn't good enough anymore. Great savoir-faire, the capacity to create content, has to be matched by great faire savoir, great communication. And this implies very clearly using the social media channels. It's very interesting because I spent about 11 years as a Swiss negotiator in international Geneva and also chairing processes. And at the time, it's not so long ago, nobody was really thinking about the necessity to engage on social media. What we were caring about, or what we were caring about, was really to outreach to other diplomats and perhaps from time to time to journalists. How much has the world changed? Social media has indeed become a great tool with which to spread the message. And not only have we to share the message of what happens in Geneva with the rest of the world, I believe there is a secondary objective which is absolutely fundamental. We also need to essentially spread the word amongst the Geneva actors in itself. In other words, we need to break the silos. We need to start thinking about the ecosystem value added. This last dimension, in my opinion, is really becoming increasingly crucial because to tackle some of the most important challenges of our time, nobody has all of the answers. We essentially need each other. We can't just go for technical solutions or other type solutions. We need to have so many people around the table. We do, in other terms, need to work holistically and with a multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary approach. Only if we do that, we will really be in a position to succeed. This means we need to build new bridges, not physical bridges, but bridges of the minds in terms of working together between the organizations in Geneva, the international organizations in Geneva, but also between international Geneva and business Geneva, because some of the biggest challenges might also be tomorrow's biggest opportunities. And there are matches to very clearly be made better. Third and last, we obviously need to create better bridges between international Geneva and academia. Once again, I see a great opportunity for two sides, win-wins as we call them in negotiations. Any clue, dear friends and e-friends, I shouldn't forget the e-friends, those who follow us on the internet, any clue how many tweets are issued in any internet minute? Anybody wanting to take a guess? Jovan, you can't respond to that question. You're too well informed.
Count up to millions.
Yeah. Almost 480,000 tweets are exchanged by minutes, and about a million logins to Facebook are done each and every minute. If one, in other terms, wants to cut across the noise, and there is a lot of noise, one needs to privilege quality. And in that context, I'm very proud and happy to emphasize the importance, and you mentioned this, Stephanie, in your introductory remarks, of not just counting the likes, but counting how the quality of engagement works. And I'm enormously pleased here that Geneva Internet Platform's fantastic data team focused on this quality aspect as much as on the quantity aspect. So again, very, very well done. There will be winners. They will be announced relatively soon, but I think it's about much more than the winners. In a certain sense, participating is winning, to paraphrase Baron de Coubertin, the guy who essentially relaunched the Olympic Games at the very end of the 19th century. And I would like really here to conclude my short introductory remarks to congratulate you all. It's really us all as a community, whether we win the prize or not, who are at the end of the day going to collectively move this important common agenda forward. Let me therefore conclude by warmly thanking you all for being here, for your engagement. And last but not least, I'd like to especially congratulate GIP, Geneva Internet Platform, for their amazing work. And again, and confirm me that is true, I'm very happy you couldn't participate in your own competition, because you would probably have won all of the prizes. But I'm sure you haven't done that. Conflict of interest. So let's end up with thanking you all, but especially GIP for their amazing work. Thank you so much, and cheers.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Stephanie. We will now enter into the theme discussion on what makes social media campaigns effective. There are different elements that contribute to the successfulness and to the effectiveness of a social media campaign. In our discussion, the panelists will now look at a number of elements, tapping into the experience of their communication teams from various organizations. Among the issues, let me just mention a few. How traditional media and social media interact between each other. The rise of digital diplomacy and its impact on diplomatic practice. The networking effect, interacting with other organizations around communications and sharing social media good practices. And last, under the bonnet, measuring and analyzing the impact of social media campaigns. Let us welcome the speakers. Please have a seat. Our panel will be moderated by the interim head of the Geneva Internet Platform, Stephanie Borg-Psaila, and will feature Ambassador Álvaro Cedeño Molinari, former ambassador of Costa Rica to the WTO, Ms. Paola Ceresetti-Bear, head of media and public relations at the Permanent Mission of Switzerland, Aizadeh Poltier-Mutual, head of the Perception Change Project at the United Nations Office in Geneva, and George Jantic, head of the data team at DiploFoundation. Welcome.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you especially for the support that the Canton of Geneva gives to the GIP and the Geneva Engage Awards. And thank you also to our panelists for being here with us today and for sharing your experiences. We hope to have today an informal conversation. So I'll be asking our panelists a few questions to tap into their brains, and then we'll open the floor for comments and questions and any thoughts that you may have on the themes that we'll touch upon during this panel discussion. So thank you, Marco, for introducing our panelists. I won't introduce you again, obviously. But Paola, I'll start with you. Paola, for those of you who don't know Paola, Paola has a lot of experience also in traditional journalism. Correct, Paola?
Traditional journalism.
More Exactly. Paula, what is the link between traditional journalism and social media today? So are there any, let's say, in their inverted commas competition? Is there a clear winner between the two? How are they competing?
Clear winner. I'm afraid at the moment the information social media are a bit winning the race because we all know that traditional press has big problems finding new model of financing, sustainable model of financing. So it's not that easy for traditional press to have the same impact that they had 10, 15 years ago. I'm not sure this evolution is very good for the well-functioning of democracy. I mean, we all know that social media used to propose you content that reflect your opinion. For democracy, we should, at the contrary, confront each other on different opinions. I still think that the traditional press is very, very important for the good functioning of democracy. And I was very pleased on Monday evening. I think on Monday evening, the Secretary General said that there is some elements showing now that the population is, how can I say, recovering awareness about the importance of traditional press for the well-functioning of the society of democracy. And I really hope that this trend will be more and more solid for the future because traditional press is very, very important. I'm a little bit old school.
Thank you, Paula. You mentioned the point there, confronting each other. I think let's say, what we mean is engagement. But as we'll see with Asia, what a lot of the organizations do is just broadcast. And by organizations, I mean a lot of actors on social media, not just in international. But we'll go into that in a little bit. Let me turn the floor to Ambassador Alvaro. You're very active on social media. So for those who don't know, the Ambassador, you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you even did a TED Talk. So social media is you use it extensively, which is, I would say, not so common for ambassadors. How did the social media engagement in your case, how did it impact your work here in Geneva?
Thank you very much. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone speaking about this topic. Nevertheless, it's somehow very close to my heart. I would say that I would have to go back 13 years to 2006 when I read a book called The Long Tail, written by Chris Anderson. Some of you might know it. I'm sure Jovan does. Where he speaks about, in this digital universe, there is a long tail market economy where you will at least find 2 or 3 customers that will be interested in whatever it is you want to sell in this new world. Whether it is an idea or your own concept of beauty or a good or a service. So back then in 2006, I thought that we were going in that direction. I created my first blog, which discussed issues of conflict transformation and peace, which is my academic background. And I also created my first YouTube channel. YouTube had just been purchased by Google from the 2 people who created it. And at the time, it didn't make a lot of sense to have these 2 outlets because there wasn't a lot of audience in the long tail. So there were very few likes, if you may. But it allowed me to develop the habit or the skill or the taste for sharing ideas and information in this audiovisual way, as YouTube allows you to, or more written form as a blog. And then 4 years later, I went back to school to study a master's in public policy, and I chose to conduct an independent study, which was a 300-hour study on whatever field you wanted. And I chose social media. And then the year immediate after my study, I was appointed ambassador to Japan. And then one more year later, in 2012, when the Obama administration was reappointed for a second term, under the leadership of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the U.S. launched a very effective campaign of smart power or digital diplomacy that developed this massive multi-million engagement of followers through multiple outlets through their diplomatic missions around the world. So I thought, you know, this is a very interesting way of combining the digital social media tools with diplomacy. Fast forward to my years here in Geneva, I knew through the long tail theory that if I created a message to share on social media, and I could reach at least one or two people that I did not know or that were not present in the room wherever I gave a speech or a message, then I was creating impact beyond my physical presence. So yes, of course, short answer to your question. I think that social media has allowed my country, Costa Rica, to have a greater impact through social media by sharing this kind of information. Obviously, there are pits and falls regarding how do you distinguish, where do you draw the line between your personal opinion and the official message from your country, but that's, I guess, another story.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador, can I ask you an additional question? Was there any of the tools, the social media tools, which you preferred over the others? Maybe have you seen the difference in the growth or in the popularity from the point of view of the diplomat using the tools?
I think that I was very positively impressed here in Geneva about how many people that belong to International Geneva are active and present on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Not so much on Instagram. I don't think Facebook is the tool for engaging formally. And then other tools that are less important. But I have to say that in this regard, Twitter is more versatile, and I would even say more fertile for ideas to be cross-pollinized and shared in a faster way. So if you engage with the influencers in town, your messages are going to be replicated to a far larger audience than you could reach on your own. And LinkedIn has allowed me to build, well, LinkedIn is the new business card, right? So I don't give out business cards anymore, trying to save trees, but at the same time, you know, trying to move into this new technology. And when I came to Geneva, I changed my strategy on LinkedIn. I usually did not accept invitations from people I did not know. But working in the area of trade, you know that the community of trade policymakers is rather small worldwide. So I started receiving a lot of invitations from people in this network of trade policymaking, and I thought it was important to engage with them, even if they were sitting at a university desk and in the next town or in another country nearby. I started accepting invitations to anyone who was from the trade environment. And along the years, I actually met them physically, many of them. So I think it made sense to engage on LinkedIn as a business card virtually, even with people that you haven't actually met. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador. You mentioned influencers also, and I think that ties into what Georgia will tell us in a little bit, influencers and the impact of the social media campaigns. But I now turn the floor to Aziadeh. Aziadeh, you manage or you coordinate or you have a group of, a network of communication teams from various organizations that meet regularly. Now their work is quite varied. So the teams, the subject areas that they deal with are extremely varied. But have you, as the head of the Perception Change Project, which runs the network, could you identify some of the common challenges and potential solutions that the communication teams, that the representatives have shared from the discussions that you've had?
Thank you. No, I think the first challenge was when the Director General of the United Nations in Geneva launched the Perception Change Project. The idea was to talk more as one unified UN Geneva or international Geneva on topics and not on logos of organizations. So how we can communicate differently, how we can change the narrative. So that was the first challenge as the PCP per se. So I think that we took it from two angles. First of all, we tried to group all the topics of different organizations around three big themes, which are peace, rights, and well-being. And everybody found a space in these three themes for the achievement of the SDGs. So it's kind of easy. So that's the general idea. And then we started producing some very specific products in which we could communicate together. And then we had these meetings in which we were trying to give the tools to better communicate. So I will give some examples. We started with something that was called Geneva Means. So Geneva Means. What Geneva means? Geneva means protecting the refugees, the migrants. Geneva means promoting gender, protecting natural resources, et cetera, And we were asking all the organizations to tell us what they were doing on this specific topic. So we started a very good social media campaign. And once we had the responses, we were tweeting or we were trying to put them on the social media. And then automatically we will have the agencies taking these information because we're promoting them. So it's a win-win situation. We had something with impact infographics. Esther is there because she's the author of it. So I'm just giving some visual examples, no? So this is an impact infographic, International Geneva for Clean Water and Sanitation. So you would have all the organizations saying what they are doing on that. So we would distribute this impact infographic, and then we would take, for example, one specific done by UNEP. And then UNEP will take it specific, and then they will start. So it really works. Then we started a campaign on the SDGs. We have a big advertisement campaign with the duty-free shops around the world in airports. It's a campaign called You Need to Know. And then we wondered that people, when they see the SDGs, they want to do something, but they don't know what to do. So we started something that is called the 170 Actions for the SDGs. So I don't know if you have it. No, well, it was here. I wanted to put it here. But you have it? The
Trello link?
The Trello board link? No. Well, anyway, it was a Trello board link with very specific actions that people could do on the SDGs. So this is a part of products. So producing campaigns or producing impact infographics that we could share together. The other one is we're meeting once a month, and these are the PCP meetups. And we are trying to see how we can better communicate. So, for example, last year we had very good PCP meetups about how to really work on data visualization, how to try to work on branding, and sanity in the organization. So they feel that the challenge is not about what we are discussing, but the challenge is on how we're going to promote it or to communicate. Last week we had a very interesting, and you were there, a very interesting PCP meetup about behavioral change. Because in the end, we all want to work on behavioral change. So we invited experts from the University of Geneva. So that was one example. We had 1 month ago something on perception versus reality, knowing that sometimes reality numbers are more positive than the ones that we perceive. So that's the other way we're trying to work between organizations.
Thank you, Razia. Yes, I've been to the last meeting, and it was very interesting discussion, in fact. But as soon as we finish the first round of questions, I'll turn the floor to you here for maybe if you can share any examples of collaboration that you have with your organizations, with other organizations. So we can see any best practices or any ongoing work that you're already doing with other organizations. It would be interesting to hear your experiences too. But I'll turn now the floor to Georgia, and if you have any comments about each other's questions, please stop me. All right. Georgia, you have extensive experience in coming from the business perspective, so online marketing, social media for businesses. What can organizations and permanent missions learn from the way that businesses use social media for their purposes?
Well, thank you, Steph. There is a lot of differences and of course, some specifics regarding the organizations part. As you said, my previous experience in business world kind of scarred me for life. And when I started doing more stuff with this diplomatic environment, there's definitely a different prioritizing and different KPIs, or again, business talks, different targets, different things to measure. In business world, most likely you have two, to simplify things, major goals. You have straightforward conversions, sales, which are basically the product of your activities, and you have direct sales or direct activities due to your campaigns. And then you have a branding effect. Branding effect, whether it is brand awareness, in order for someone to recognize at least that you exist, or brand recognition part, to recognize you. For instance, when you enter the store, you recognize if there is your favorite toothpaste there. In diplomatic part, that branding aspect or creating perception is much, much more important. And this is something that really struck me as the strongest impression. Especially the ambassador spoke about the personal usage and the specifics of personal usage of the social media for the people who are very visible to the eye, to the public eye, and again, they are representing a very important function, organization, or country. So that distinction in usage between the personal account and the, so should I say, business or organizational aspect is something that is very specific, or much more prone to the organizational part is have much more problems with that. Organization, classic business don't have that much problem. They tend to to basically focus on corporate aspect. The second part of the equation is something that we all mentioned, but not directly, is that the beginning of the rise of the social media basically started the Web 2.0 change, in which the communication started to be two-way. That means that you can no longer shout at your audience. You can no longer say only in one direction. You will get a response back. In business terms, you will get a response back if you do something stupid, if you create a stupid campaign, if you create something that your audience doesn't like or approve, you will get a slap on the wrist. And this is similar to the organizational aspect. If, for instance, recently, PTA organization had a very rough time on the internet because they made fun or criticized Google's Doodle for Steve Irwin. And PETA was attacked ruthlessly on Twitter and basically criticized and every single wrong thing they did. And although they are environmental organization, they're fighting for the rights of animals, they were crucified on the internet. So again, you have an organization which is doing good things. They're promoting protection of animals, and they got a really, really, really strong response from the community. So basically, when you use social media, and social media is a tool, is a channel. It's not the only thing. I'm not a social media evangelist. Personally, my accounts are very boring. I do work for others, but I have a biggest relationship with social media as much people here. The important thing is to understand it is a two-way communication. You will get a response, and you have to count on it. So you're building an audience, but you're building an audience which is also either your colleagues, building a community. The example with LinkedIn is perfect. That is one of the rare examples of proper usage of LinkedIn, accepting connections, basically using it as a business network, which is, and basically trying to understand that you are now visible. whether it's individual or organization, you're visible, you will get a response from an ordinary person, from a colleague, from an academic community. So the weight of your attitudes, of your of things you do is now under a much, much bigger eye than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So everybody be careful what you do. Understand the tools, understand the ethics, understand the rules of the game, and you can use it to a big greater good. Again, this is a tool. Social media does not exist without people. People decide whether it will do good or bad. So it is not a question, is it opposing journalism? It should work together with it, classic journalism.
Thank you, Georgia.
I say the same things to my kids at home. Huh?
Can you say that again on the mic?
Oh, no, I was just saying that I say the same things to my kids at home, of course. I was not saying that journalism and social media opposed one to the other. For me, is absolutely, I'm not against social media. I use social media every day, and I do it with a big pleasure, of course. But we have to keep in mind that social media is, in my opinion, is information, but it is also a lot of marketing. And we do the same here in International Geneva. We just don't sell shoes or bags, we sell values and the idea of working together and multilateralism, which is something that is not really for many people now right sexy, because we get a lot of criticism about that. But what does it mean to make marketing for values? In my opinion, is exactly the same. That idea is, if you make marketing for shoes or for values, you have to be exactly in the same way as a professional, or even more for values. You know, that's a challenge for the multilateralism and the way we have to function here in Geneva. We have to be very professional and very open to engage to the people, because we are like building up trust again in multilateralism, because people who are again multilateralism, they shout it very loud on social media. So we have to be very professional to not to respond. I don't think it's a good strategy, but to affirm our values and our actions on social media, and that's it, I think.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Paula, for that. I'll go back a little bit. You mentioned criticism, and here I think one of the main points that has mentioned in each of your interventions is the engagement. So it's the communication between, from one hand, let's say from the organizations using the tools to communicate, and on the other hand, the public, the audience, interacting. Now, in reality, as I said a few moments ago, in reality, a lot of people, I'm not going to say organizations, because it's not just the organizations, it's the businesses. Let's say a lot of social media campaigners use the tool just to broadcast and not to engage. You mentioned, Paula, criticism. Could that be the reason why we're not using social media to engage more, but we're simply broadcasting? Are we afraid of the criticism, of the backlash that we can receive if we start to communicate more? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the question is really, really very interesting, because I think that we are in a very specific transition. Broadcasters are using social media to engage with the public, and organizations are using broadcasting to communicate. And I think that at some point we're going to be in this level in which we are all going to do social broadcasting. The thing is that now we're using YouTube, we're using Facebook, we're using Twitter. This is the way we are communicating. If I tell my kids, go and watch the news on the BBC, they will laugh at me. They prefer to receive the alert from the BBC, because somehow they're connecting to something. And today, even for young people, they need to connect. It's not that you're just going to be in front of your TV and you're going to watch the news. This is finished. So somehow I think that it's very positive. Now, I remember that in the campaigns I was doing in my previous jobs, we wanted to have, for example, the most known football player because he had 10 million followers, okay? Now, there is a big difference now between a like and between an engagement. And I think that more and more organizations prefer to have 100 very good followers in which you really start the conversation, in which you're really engaging, instead of having 10 million people that will say, oh yes, WHO, I love you Neymar, because then you will have 10 million, I love you Neymar, but you're not going to be the engagement. So I think that we're really in this transition, and I think that it is really, really very positive. Today, the World Cup is seen through mobile devices. So people are not watching TVs anymore. So we have to know, so I think that organizations now are using the tool because this is the way we can send images. But you see, I think that, I think it's very positive because we are having this conversation.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I agree, in fact. But I'd like also to hear, Ambassador, your view on this from the point of view of a diplomat, of an ambassador using social media. Is it, let's say, is it easy to engage? What are the challenges there? So is it just, let's say, broadcasting? Is it easy to go further than that, based on your experience on social media and perhaps the experience of your mission or, well, other diplomats that use social media?
I think the question is, how do you perceive the value that you want to create? What impact you want to have? And in social media, I would say, well, I'm here sitting in a panel of experts where I am not, but I would say that today the greatest value is not in the message itself, but on the conversation that you build, and understanding that we live in an age of collaborative knowledge. So no one knows everything, or to say it in another word, we all together know better than any one of us individually. So throwing out a message to create a ripple effect, to start a conversation, to build a heartbeat, and to keep it up is where the most value can be derived. So we had somehow an example of this at the WTO and UNCTAD both together in the last couple of years with the Coalition of Friends of E-Commerce for Development. We needed to set the agenda in the organization, and in order to do that, we had to create a conversation, and we could not do it through the institutional channels because they were blocked. So we had to do it in parallel on the side, created a conversation, built a heartbeat, kept it up every 15 days or so, and after a year and a half, you start seeing joint agreements and building up on this process. So the same applies for any campaign that you have on social media. Continuity, follow-up is extremely important. If you have a clear sense of value, a clear sense of what is the impact that you want to achieve, and if you want to start with the beginning, the question you have to ask yourself is why? Do you really have something to say? And why?
Very important points, Alvaro. Exactly. I like the way that you just explained it, to build a heartbeat. Now, to be able to engage, probably one needs certain skills, certain communication skills. Are these skills something that you learn, or is it, let's say, a natural predisposition that you need to have in order to communicate, let's say, effectively?
I think after you've written 10,000 tweets, you are much better at effective communication, of designing a message that is, univocal, that is going to be understood, that is not going to be misrepresented. I do think that there's a lot of learning to do. There's a lot of knowledge. There are particular skills to develop. There are methodologies and strategies and multiple books written about it already. But I would say the most important thing is the attitude that you have towards the tools and understanding the tools as means to ends. They are not an end in itself. So having a Twitter account or writing 3 tweets per day is not really what counts. What counts is, what is the real content, the real value that you are creating. So there is a lot that you can learn. And when if I can go back very quickly to the attitudes itself, are your messages, do they have a good intention? Do they aspire to create value? Whose lives are you improving? If you have this clarity, then you can take some risks. For example, as a public officer, you can take the risks of sending out messages that haven't been specifically instructed to you or mandated to you. But you can do it confident enough that you are, advancing the cause of your organization, your country, in my case, or your corporation or your NGO. So you can take some risks, and in that sense, create positive results.
Thank you. Paula, I saw you smile when Alvaro said taking some risks.
No, it's not about risk, because there is different philosophies in ministry or on, I don't know if in organization is the same, but in ministry, for example, foreign affairs, you have the 2 different philosophy. One is the social media manager is the only one who can tweet, and he has to ask the minister before. And other countries, like Italy, for example, they start to prepare to train their diplomats since the beginning, since they are very young diplomats, to be really to be really comfortable with social media, and I think, in my opinion, it's not the philosophy my country choose, but in my opinion, is the best way to deal with social media with diplomats. My country starts very late to train diplomats, and we are now training our diplomats, but the one who has the code of the account is still very few people. We don't give it to diplomats, but we train them to be able to suggest us content for social media. I say to my diplomats, would you say it in front of a camera during a TV interview? If you would say it, it's okay. If you will not, please don't post it. That's something out. You go out, you go public, and it's not very different than from a TV interview or a radio interview. But people has to be trained, and we, Switzerland, will have still a long way to go, in my opinion.
It's a good question to ask, actually.
I was just curious. That's why I gave the microphone to Ambassador, how Costa Rica trains diplomats.
Well, it's a funny story. I told you when I was in Japan and the U.S. administration came out with this soft power strategy, I drafted a report with a strategy of how Costa Rica could engage in smart power. And it's been 7 years, and I'm still waiting for a response. And still today, my country does not do official engagement on social media. So it's up to the individual diplomat or mission or head of mission to decide if and what to do.
It is a common position, in fact, so it's not only that country. So what I wanted now to spend a few minutes on is something very, let's say, a very practical challenge. Many of the missions, or some, I don't know actually, they have very small teams. A few of the organizations whom I talked to this week do not even have communication teams. And yet we are talking about engagement. We're talking about not just broadcasting, but engaging. Now, from a very practical point of view, how does one do that when in the team there are just, for instance, in Paula's team, if I may say this, it's just you and someone else doing all the traditional media, the social media. And yet you have very active accounts like the Swiss_UN on Twitter. It has over 20,000 followers. I know you share the account with the New York also. Exactly, but it's only 2 people. So how do you manage that? Do you manage it? I mean, for engagement and not just broadcasting.
It could be better. We'll just engage with very important messages. Most of the time we do broadcast, and how we survive? Well, we count on diplomats. Diplomats suggest us things to tweet, and then we make the final check and we tweet. But we could do better.
And probably it is the experience of a lot of the organizations from the discussions that we have here. I'd like to turn the floor to you for questions, comments, thoughts on any of the elements for social media that our panelists have just referred to. Yes, Cedric will go around with the microphone. I'm seeing Ambassador, please.
Thanks a lot. I'm a Swedish Perm Rep, Ambassador Veronica Bard. It's very interesting to listen to the panelists, and we've been smiling and chatting, my collaborator and I, because we recognize a lot of what you said. But one thing that worries me is, and I think, Paula, you touched upon that, is that in order to solve all the problems we and the challenges we see so much of here in Geneva, we need to engage. And the social media has this tendency, it has been researched, that you stay in a bubble. Do you have any idea how one could break up this bubble? Because before, reading newspapers, listening to public TV, we would be confronted with various views. I see it myself. I'm an oldie. I use Facebook, and I read basically probably the same stuff from my friends who think like me. But this is a danger, because we do the broadcasting and we never meet, and we will not be able to understand other people's views and resolve the problems.
Yeah, I'm just telling something, but maybe I shouldn't. But we're working on the Geneva website now. I think that it's very important now that not only telling people the beautiful things that we're doing, but telling people what they can do. And it's only when you tell people what they can do that you really have the engagement. For example, now on the new Geneva website, we're going to have an action button, and people will take action. So it will change from the donate button, because donate button is just donate, and people want to do, but people are just requesting and desperately asking us, tell us what to do. And a tell us what to do doesn't need to be, okay, you have to support UNHCR and refugees, because maybe the person is not going to do that, but they are going to do that. But maybe we can tell them, if you want to do a search, go to Google and ask this question. And when you ask this question, you will have these answers. Now, this is one. The other one is that it's true that many times we have to do the things if they have to reach through big platforms. So we launched a campaign with Sir David Attenborough during the COP24, which is called Take Your Seat. And we put a seat, an empty seat at the COP24, which was an empty seat that would represent the voice of the people. And then people could share their voices with the government. So this is the type of campaigns we can only do with big advertising agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So when you really want to reach big, so you really have to invite people that are working on a very big scale. So that's one answer.
Yeah, if you can give the microphone to Georgia. Georgia, in marketing, I think it's called call for action.
Yeah, it's a classic call for action, but this is in a nutshell implementing basically the voice of the people back, the twofold communication. You're actually listening what an ordinary citizen or anyone from the general public wants to say. And that's the core value of social media. And also regarding the bubble, which is, of course, a known phenomena, again, social media is a channel and a tool. Those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, is a tool. So, in simple terms, if you want to challenge yourself in other opinions, try follow someone who is not appealing at first. Try following some other media, try following some other influencers or anybody from your wider, for Facebook, which is mostly focused on personal contacts. we all have at least a couple of friends that are sharing the same values, and we all have a couple of acquaintances over the Facebook who doesn't share the same values, but for some magical reason they're still in our friend list. So instead of implementing the Facebook's properly concepted tool of blocking or unfollowing someone, try to leave it there. That is a very simple and basically inbuilt way to try to break out of the bubble and try to see the things that annoy us in a nutshell. But that phenomena of the bubble is very well known. So again, it all breaks down working on social or using social media, whether it's for personal usage or whether it's professional usage in an organization. It doesn't require some special magical skills. It does require some understanding of how things work and some will that you actually tune yourself into that. Because I have noticed, I have held lectures in education in past 10 years regarding usage of internet, social media, internet marketing, everything that has E attached to it. And there is still a very strong notion of, fear is not a good term, but hesitance toward anything slightly technical. Social media is technical in an essence, but not fundamentally. The logic behind it is communications. So if you're good at communication skills, if you understand public relations, if you understand how to convey a message, how to think in a debate or communication view, then you have just a tool. Like you're standing in someone and speaking, you have basically a tool to speak to a much wider audience and to receive a feedback from that audience. So some small aspect of communication, some small aspect of technical, small, and you have a magical combination that works.
Yes, sure.
Just very quickly, two thoughts that came to mind with your comment, Ambassador. The first one is that it is said that social media is a full-time job on top of your full-time job. And the second thing is that as it happens in our digital sphere and in our offline world of bricks, silos are very important. They contain a lot of expertise. And we should not try to break them. We should try to figure out a way to better engage between them in order to create value. So that's where synergy and co-creation of value comes from. So I would say that trying to have an approach of what I call PPPs, public-private partnerships for people, planet, and purpose. It is something that should be our goal in everything we do in order to solve the more complex challenges that we have in a global scale.
That would make a good tweet. Yes, now with that Twitter has the 280 characters, there is space for the full acronym. Okay, there is a question there. Yes, please. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi there. I'm Bijan from the Kofi Annan Foundation. And it's a part comment, part question. I had the good fortunes of being able to accompany Mr. Annan to Stanford last year before Mr. Annan's passing in August. The background was the launching of a commission on elections and democracy in the digital age. And we were briefed by Stanford researchers and scholars on this polarization issue that we're discussing with echo chambers. I'm not an expert in this, but research suggests that these echo chambers are actually much overrated. The problem of echo chambers isn't nearly as bad as we all think it is, and the bubble that you referred to doesn't quite polarize or radicalize nearly as much as we believe that it does. The real threat to the reasoned democratic debate that is necessary for democracies to survive is threatened more by the very snapshot type of conversation that social media promotes, that social media instills, where your tweet has to be short and where you need a flashy picture, or where you need the 7 points to whatever, or the 5 points. We all know these. Essentially the dumbing down of complex societal and political issues that are contrary to the complicated, long-drawn, reasoned debate that democracy necessitates. And that is a much greater threat, and I'm just paraphrasing what other people who studied this are saying, than these echo chambers apparently are. So.
Thank you for your comment, and I would add to your comment the fact that our attention span is very short also, so that contributes to the challenge that you're mentioning. Would anyone would like to react to that comment?
I absolutely agree with you, and at the same time, I cannot agree completely, because if we think that for example, here in the biotope of International Geneva, our challenges are pretty complex. All our challenges are pretty complex, and so they are complex. And what does it mean? We are not able to find a way to talk to the people about what we do. I mean, one of the huge talent of Mr. Anand was absolutely to be able to explain to everybody the complexity of what we do by federating everybody around common values. So it was never too simple, too easy, but it could communicate and it could really engage people around him and the value we share. Of course, it's not easy, but we really have to try to do this job. If we don't have a lot of chances to survive, in my opinion, because people who are critics against multilateralism, they don't think a lot. They go straight on. And they do the job on social media, so we have to find a way to do the job. And about the bubble, I try sometimes to cheat the bubble, and I post articles of traditional press with other opinions than mine. And it works. Not that good, but it works a little bit.
Thank you, Paola. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Cedric, we need the microphone here, please.
Thank you, Cedric. As you know, I'm very short. I have to stand up, but you can see me. I'm Johan Kurbeli. I'm formerly with the Diplo, and now I'm with the UN High-Level Panel, Secretary General High-Level Panel on Digital Cooperation. I thought, Alvaro, that I know the most complicated acronym, but you told me with this PPPP to be even more complicated.
G-Surf is even worse.
Which one?
G-Surf is even worse.
G-Surf.
Global Fund, done, I can't remember, but we have a lot of
Great. Now, just a few quick comments. First, on the empty chair. What we have been trying to do in the panel discussion is to put empty chair for the future generation. Because what we are doing now with the digital in terms of knowledge and shaping the world that will come in the future is going to have a huge impact. And here with us is Ambassador Alex Shibara-Strigona, who launched the concept of common heritage of mankind in the UN with the idea to preserve cultural and knowledge heritage for future generations. Therefore, that idea is excellent. But what has been resonating with me in consultations during the panel is that people react very well to clarity. And we have been trying to communicate with the utmost clarity. You may disagree, you may not have the answer, but also you have to clearly communicate that you don't have an answer. And what Harari wrote in his latest book, Clarity is a Power, my experience from the work at the panel is that it is very, very correct and true. You communicate what are the challenges of digital era, people react well, they may agree or disagree, but you engage in conversation, you respect their views, and you have a reality check, which is sometimes the problem for another bubble where we think that what we pronounce, which is very human, that it is reality. But reality is often quite different. And that element of clarity, engagement, respect from other views is probably those are as simple and probably as old as humanity. I think they work quite well, and that would be interesting to see, Georgie, in your research, how this element of clarity is adding to the impact of the communication. Therefore, my question is around this: how do you see in your work the element of clarity, and how one has to deal with ambiguities in diplomacy and preserve some element of clarity? Thank you.
Thank you, Jovan. Would anyone like to react?
I think that what your question inspires, Jovan, is the topic of values. I've heard talk about values since I was 12 years old, and I have seen no progress in the conversation. And I've lately come to understand that we just don't know which values to pursue, which values to share. And there is a quote by Emil Durkheim that says that when values are sufficient, rules are unnecessary. And when values are insufficient, rules are ineffective. So it doesn't matter really what rules or if you have rules, but what matters is whether you have values and which values you have. So I would say, and touching on Harari, that the values we need to promote are those that enrich our collective well-being and our collective wealth. So that is a conversation we should have, and we should identify them, we should prioritize them, and we should work together collectively to spread them out.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more positive about that. And probably because we're seeing all this incredible movement of young people doing things for climate change. And when you have a girl of, I don't know, she's 14 or 12 years old, going to Katowice and saying, I don't care anymore what you are doing. I am telling you that I will do. This is totally different from the conference, from the speech we had in Rio 92, with a young person saying, you are guilty and you have to be responsible. And I think that this has changed a lot, because that means that they are working on values. Now, the thing is that, of course, today it is climate change. But if we have one value, and if we see that everybody, now you have kids in all over the place, not only, marching or protesting, but also doing things. So I don't know. I think that this empty seat, and I think that here we have clarity. The message is very clear. It's about climate change, and it is about what young generations can do for that. So, and you said 12 years old, so that started very young.
Thank you, and also the value of responsibility there, that a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old is able to convey to adults. Any more questions from the audience or comments? I will stand up to see everyone at the back. No comments, no questions. All right. So I think we're almost on schedule, and it is the time to thank you all for your participation and for your excellent insights from your experiences and your work. Please join me in thanking our excellent panelists. I think we mentioned so many elements that make campaigns effective. And now I think we'll move on to the awards part. And can I invite you to take the seats? And I will also give the floor to Marco. So thank you once again. This was excellent. Thank you. And I'll give the floor to Marco.
Thank you, Stephanie. A very big thank you to all the panelists for this interesting discussion. We are now entering finally into the ceremonial part of the event, the award ceremony. Before celebrating our nominees for their effectiveness and in social media engagement, I would like to welcome my colleague Natasha Perucica, a member of the Diplo data team, who will explain to us the methodology and especially the analysis behind the awards. Natasha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Natasha Perucica, as Marco already has introduced me, and I'm part of Diplo's data team. Together with my colleagues, we conducted an analysis of the actors' engagement on social media in 2018, and I would like to give you a brief overview of our methodology. So first, we conducted our analysis from 1st January 2018 until 31st December 2018 with the help of two tools. We used third-party services, namely Diplomacy and Twitonomy. Just like in the previous years, we looked into three categories. The first category is that of permanent representations, the second of NGOs, and the third IOs. In other words, international organizations, including international governmental organizations, international non-governmental organizations, and international organizations with global representation. The study was based on two criteria. The first criteria that we considered for the Geneva Engage Award was that international organizations have to be based in Geneva, as well as permanent missions. The second, we looked into the fact that these organizations need to have both a Twitter and a Facebook account, and these accounts need to be active. Moreover, in order to narrow down the number of organizations that we followed, we set a few limitations. First of all, international organizations need to have at least 10,000 followers, whilst NGOs need to have 3,000 and permanent missions, NGOs 3,000 and permanent missions 2,000. The reason why there is such a difference between IOs and NGOs and permanent missions is, as Stephanie already mentioned, they possess different resources, namely NGOs and permanent missions possess way less resources than international organizations. We also looked at several other factors in order to actually measure the engagement of these organizations. So we added two other factors to the two criteria. First of all, we looked at engagement indicators, such as engaging content, active engagement, and effective engagement, as well as overall growth. With regards to engaging content, we gathered information on the number of mentions per tweet, for instance. For active engagement, we looked at the rate of interaction on Facebook, and for effective engagement, we measured the number of tweets retweeted by other users. As I've said, the other factor was growth, and here we looked into we looked at the relative growth of Facebook and Twitter accounts. We compared the number of followers in 2017 with the number of followers in 2018, and we looked if there was an increase or a decrease. So this was also an important factor that we considered. Overall, these factors helped us look into the activity, but also the engagement of organizations on social media and how engaging they are in actual fact towards their audiences. A detailed report of our results is available on the Geneva Engage website, and we are already preparing for next year. We are currently developing a new methodology and assessing possibilities of expanding our study. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Natasha, for explaining the big work there is behind the Geneva Engage Awards. It is with excitement now that I finally announce the start of the awards ceremony. To award the organizations and their teams, I have the pleasure to invite on stage Stephanie and Mr. Olivier Couteau, delegate to International Geneva for the Canton of Geneva. Please join me on stage. As Natasha illustrated, the awards will be given to the three following categories: permanent representations in Geneva, non-governmental and non-profit organizations, and finally, international organizations based here in Geneva. The ceremony will be organized as it follows. For each category, I will first announce the two runners-up for the award. I will invite them and their teams on stage for the award and the picture. Then I will announce the winner for the same category, who will also be invited on stage. Let us start with the first category, the permanent representations. And the runner-ups are Permanent Delegation of the European Union to the UN and the Permanent Mission of France to the United Nations in Geneva. Congratulations to all. If you want to join me on stage for the award. Francine, okay? I'm sure. Next time. Okay. Please. Congratulations. Please come. Don't be shy. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Stand in the center if you for a picture. So please. Congratulations again. And now, the winner for the category of permanent representation goes to Sweden in Geneva. Congratulations. If you would like. Ambassador, would you like to say a few words? I will not say a tweet, but very few lines.
No, actually, I'm a bad tweeter, I must confess immediately, but yeah, like any decent Oscar Award winner, I must say, what a surprise. This comes as a real surprise to us. And the reason is actually, and I try to think of, why it is. Our Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a Golden Tweet Award since back in 2013, when our then Foreign Minister, Carl Bildt, launched a campaign that each and every diplomat would be free to tweet. And I had 3 chances. I served as ambassador in Vienna, in Moscow, and here. And my teams never won this golden tweet. I had given up. But I must say, this award really sort of is a much bigger award. It really outweighs the foreign ministry's little golden tweet. And I will make sure that my collaborator Henning will tweet about this fantastic award. And because we discussed what makes you start using social media, it really takes a figurehead. And in our case, I already mentioned his name, Carl Bildt, whom some of you know. And he, like my colleague from Costa Rica told us, hooked up with Hillary Clinton's team somehow. There was a whiz kid in her team who spread this idea that you can not only you could actually deal with traditional diplomacy, but social diplomacy would be quite effective. So since then we have been dealing with Twitter, Facebook, Instagrams, I'm not really sure we have. But for us, we are amateurs, and it's what we try to do is that we try to answer the questions we raised here before. What would you like to communicate, and why, and where, and when? And I found this campaign of UNOG, Geneva Means, very useful, because that's exactly what we try to do. How can we sort of connect Swedish policy priorities with Geneva? We have made that our challenge, and so thanks to you that obviously we have made something right. And I also have an idea what we need to work on to be to gain more clarity. Drop the acronyms and speak properly. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, and congratulations. Let us go with the second category, the non-governmental organizations and non-profit organizations in Geneva. The two runner-ups for the award are GCSP, the Geneva Center for Security Policy, and the Kofi Annan Foundation. Congratulations to the both of you, and please join us on stage. Congratulations. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Please. And now, the winner for the NGO category goes to GAVI, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunities. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Clarity.
The ecstatics. Would you like to say a few words? Or?
I can say a few words. Well, thank you very, very much on behalf of GAVI and the communications team in particular. We are very excited, very honored to receive this award. It means a lot, and I just want to make two very quick points. First of all, it's about collaboration, really. I think there's no one recipe for success when it comes to social media and digital. I think we managed to come up with a pretty good recipe last year, which we're happy with, which worked for us. But as Nicholas said in his opening remarks, this community and this you guys in this room, it's the right moment for us to come together and I think also share more kind of operational basis and have an exchange of what works, what doesn't work, maybe having some kind of regular meetings and catch-ups, really share best practices. I think that's the one thing I want to say. The second point, I've followed this over the years, so the past 4 years, and I think I'm very happy to see that the conversation is changing from number of followers to engagement. And then last point, I think, which was touched on in the panel discussion, is really about setting objectives and looking at social media as tools. That's what they are. We shouldn't focus about just getting engagement numbers, likes and shares, but really looking at how can we use these tools to achieve very specific objectives. And I think one example from last year, we organized with GAVI with the support of the Canton of Geneva and also the international community, a photo exhibition by the lakeside where we're featuring 50 portraits of vaccine heroes, people who do carry out very important life-saving work around the world every day. And it featured the work of not just GAVI, but also WHO, of UNICEF, and of our partner organization. It really showed how we can come together and having an offline event, something happening, and also extend that online. I think the mileage we saw coming out of the exhibition was not just having a very beautiful series of portraits along the lakeside, but really a lot of really fantastic engagement and collaboration between September and I would say through the last quarter of the year. And I think that is partly also thanks to why we received this award, because we saw some incredible support and engagement for our content, but also looking at the permanent missions and the organizations who are picking up and sharing and engaging with the material. So I think we can do a lot together, and collaboration, I think that's the word we need to bring forward. So thank you all very much. Fred, I'm not sure if you want to add something.
I might add in French. Oui, dans ce que disait Isaac, qui est donc responsable des médias sociaux à GAVI, est important. C'est le but jeu, c'est pas tellement l'outil, c'est encore une fois c'est l'audience, c'est les personnes qu'on essaye d'atteindre, c'est les messages que l'on essaye de faire passer, et l'important c'est aussi les valeurs, et je pense que c'est là qu'il faut tout le monde se retrouver, des valeurs de tolérance, des valeurs de fraternité, des valeurs d'ouverture, parce que finalement c'est ce pourquoi nous travaillons ici à la Genève internationale. Donc merci beaucoup, merci pour ce prix. On est très fiers, toute mon équipe, on est vraiment très heureux d'avoir reçu ça, et on espère qu'on pourra collaborer encore plus avec vous dans le futur. Merci encore. Merci.
Let us go now with the last category, international organizations based in Geneva. The runners-up for the award are the International Electrotechnical Commission and UNOPS, the United Nations Office for Project Services. Congratulations, and please join us on stage too.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. It's a public good. A global public good.
Congratulations. And now, finally, the winner for the categories of international organizations goes to the award IATA, the International Air Transport Association. Yes, exactly. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I know, just very quickly. Thank you very much indeed, and it's an honor to receive this award on behalf of the IATA CorpCom team, and it really is a team effort. I think one of the reasons for our success this year was that we really spread the best practice and encouraged the whole team to share the responsibility for social media. However, there are two people that I want to specifically mention because they really were the drivers of all the work we were doing. One is Adam Zampini, who is not here because he works in Montreal, in our Montreal office, and the other is Justina, who's on the stage with me here. And really, Adam and Justina have really been the ones who've been monitoring our channels, number crunching how we do, and really researching that best practice. And I would say that there really wasn't a magic bullet for how we did this year. It was a mixture of incremental improvements in all areas. And if there's really one thing I would say, it was that we experimented. We were just constantly experimenting with new things, whether it was threading on Twitter and doing more polling, or looking at different time zones, languages. We stripped back what we did on Facebook after the algorithm changes. So we really tried to follow what was happening out there. And that led into the second thing, which is listening. We've heard a lot about that today. That's something that we did more of in 2018, and it's definitely something we are taking on board in 2019. We're going to purchase a social listening tool. We really see that as the next step for us. So those are the two things I would really say, and I would like to say congratulations to everyone here. As it was mentioned earlier, I think the role of International Geneva spreading trusted information in this time and age around what's going on in the world is absolutely crucial. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Please don't leave us yet. I think all the runners-up and the winners deserve a final big group pictures. So please, if you can join us again for a last one. Squeeze. 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 Sasha is very demanding. Yes, I will drop you up and invite you. Yeah, you want to stay with me? Yeah. Congratulations once again to all the runner-ups and the winners, especially for the efforts in your social media campaigns and outreach. While the last pictures are being taken, I would like to announce that the formal part of the event is now over. I would like to express a big thank you to all of you, to all our nominees, our panelists, to Mr. Olivier Couteau, and to all our audience who is following us online. It is my pleasure now to invite you to stay with us for the reception, which will happen downstairs. Please follow my colleagues to guide you downstairs at the ground floor for the final cocktail. Thank you all.